The ocean had always called to him, its vastness both a comfort and a challenge. For Johnny, it wasn't just a body of water. It was a place where memories lingered, where the past met the present in ways both haunting and redemptive. He had spent most of his life avoiding the deeper questions, letting time wash over them like the waves against the shore. But lately, the sea had been sending him messages, cryptic, persistent, and he could no longer ignore them. It began with a bottle, a relic from another time, arriving in his life as if the ocean itself had decided it was time for him to face truths he had long buried. What followed was a journey across the landscape of his memories, a search for answers in the places and people he feared the most. In every corner of his past, Johnny found fragments of himself, lost loves, unspoken words, and the weight of unhealed wounds. But with each discovery, he moved closer to understanding what the sea had been trying to tell him all along. The sea had always been a place of mystery for Johnny, but now it felt almost alive, an endless, restless force carrying the echoes of human longing. Standing at the edge of the beach, with the fiery hues of a setting sun reflecting on the waves, he held another glass bottle in his hand. It wasn't his own this time. The bottle, much like the one he had discovered months earlier, had found him again. But this time, it wasn't buried in the sand. It had arrived on the tide, as if delivered intentionally. The black bottle gleamed in the dying light, its elegant shape contrasting sharply with the raw wildness of the ocean. Clutched in his hand, it seemed to hum with significance, as though it carried a message not just for him, but for the world. Johnny examined it closely. This bottle wasn't weathered by time. It was pristine, almost new, with a faint golden glow emanating from the glass itself. Unlike the first letter, a relic of the past, this felt urgent, alive, and strange. The cork slid free easily, as though it had been waiting for him. He shook out the paper inside, finding an envelope, one that bore his name, written in an elegant hand. His breath hitched. No longer an anonymous letter, this was deliberate, intentional. It wasn't addressed to John, but to Johnny Depp. Sitting down on the sand, he opened the envelope with care. Inside, a folded sheet of paper waited for him. The ink was fresh, and the words spoke directly to him. Johnny, the sea has a way of carrying truths that we can't face on our own. You've started to find them, but the journey is far from over. You've let go of some burdens, but others remain. The path ahead isn't just about your past, it's about your future. Seek the answers in the places you fear the most, and trust that this letter has found you because you're ready to hear it. There are things that remain hidden, and it's time to uncover them. Signed, a friend. The words sent a shiver down Johnny's spine. Who had sent this? How could anyone have known about the first letter, or about the journey it had set him on? And why now, just when he had thought he was starting to heal? He folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the bottle, staring out at the horizon. The waves, soothing yet enigmatic, offered no answers, only the quiet murmur of their endless motion. Johnny carried the black bottle back to his seaside home, a modest yet luxurious escape tucked away from prying eyes. The walls were adorned with paintings of ships and storms, and the air smelled faintly of salt and aged wood. The letter's cryptic message lingered in his mind, unsettling yet magnetic. What truths had he yet to uncover? And who was this friend who seemed to know so much about his inner turmoil? That night, sleep eluded him. He found himself pacing the house, the bottle placed prominently on his desk. It seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, almost as if beckoning him to action. Finally, unable to resist its pull, he decided to follow the letter's advice, to seek answers in the places he feared most. The next morning, Johnny packed a small bag and set off on a journey. His first destination was his childhood home, a place he hadn't visited in decades. The house, nestled in a sleepy Kentucky town, had been sold years ago, but its presence in his memory was vivid and haunting. It was where his relationship with his father had unraveled, where misunderstandings had hardened into silence. If there were truths to uncover, they might be buried in the echoes of that old house. Arriving in the small town, Johnny felt a wave of nostalgia and unease. The streets were quieter than he remembered, the houses smaller. Yet as he approached the old family home, he felt a strange sense of anticipation. The new owners were kind enough to let him look around, and as he wandered through the familiar rooms, memories flooded back. He saw himself as a child, playing in the yard, arguing with his father in the living room, and sneaking out the back door during teenage rebellions. In the attic, he discovered a box of his father's belongings that had somehow been left behind. Among the dusty relics was a journal, its leather cover worn but intact. Opening it, Johnny found pages filled with his father's thoughts, words that had never been spoken aloud. There were entries about their strained relationship, about his father's regrets and his unspoken love for his son. The journal was a revelation, a bridge across the chasm of years and silence. Johnny spent hours reading, tears streaming down his face. The journal didn't just provide answers. It gave him a sense of closure he hadn't thought possible. But one entry stood out. If only I could tell him. There's something he needs to know, something I never found the courage to say. Maybe one day, the sea will carry my words to him. The cryptic line sent a chill through Johnny. Could the black bottle somehow be connected to his father? The idea seemed impossible, yet he couldn't shake it. Johnny's journey didn't end there. The letter had urged him to confront not just his past, but his future, and he knew there were other truths waiting to be uncovered. With the journal safely tucked away, he set off to revisit the places and people who had shaped his life. Next was Paris, the city where he had fallen in love and lost himself in equal measure. The memories of her, the woman who had inspired his greatest joys and deepest sorrows, were everywhere. He wandered the streets they had once walked together, retracing their steps to cafes, parks, and hidden corners of the city. At a small bookstore, he found another clue, a postcard tucked into a book he had once given her. The postcard bore a simple message. Love is never lost, it just changes form. It was unsigned, but Johnny knew it was from her. The discovery reignited questions he thought he had buried. What had truly driven them apart? And was it too late to find closure? In Paris, Johnny also encountered strangers who seemed inexplicably drawn to him. One elderly woman approached him at a park, remarking, "You carry the weight of many stories, don't you?" Her words felt like another piece of the puzzle, another reminder that his journey wasn't just personal, it was part of something larger, something interconnected. Johnny's next destination was a remote lighthouse perched on a rocky coastline, a place that had been described in one of his father's journal entries. The lighthouse, according to the journal, had been a place of solace for his father during his youth. "It's where I went to understand the world," his father had written, "and perhaps where you might find your own understanding someday." The lighthouse was weathered but sturdy, its white and red paint peeling from years of exposure to the elements. Inside, Johnny found a treasure trove of artifacts, old maps, logs, and photographs that told the story of those who had tended the light over the years. Among them was a letter addressed to his father, written by a man named Samuel, an old friend of his father's who had once been the keeper of the lighthouse. The letter spoke of dreams, regrets, and the hope that the lighthouse could guide not just ships, but also souls. "If you ever bring your boy here," Samuel had written, "tell him that the light isn't just for the ocean, it's for the darkness we all carry." Johnny climbed to the top of the lighthouse, where the lantern room offered a panoramic view of the sea. As the light swept across the waves, he felt a profound sense of connection, not just to his father, but to everyone who had ever sought meaning in the vast, mysterious ocean. The lighthouse became a symbol for him, a beacon guiding him through the uncertainties of his journey. Johnny stood once more at the edge of the beach, the waves crashing at his feet as the sun dipped below the horizon. His journey had led him to places both distant and familiar, through the depths of his past and into the unknown territories of his future. The sea, once a mystery, now felt like an old friend, its whispers less enigmatic and more like a guide, one who had shown him the way to his own truth. He didn't have all the answers, but he no longer felt lost. The bottle, the letter, the lighthouse, each had served its purpose. They had pointed him toward the things he needed to see, to understand, and to forgive. Johnny had faced the darkness within himself and come out on the other side, carrying with him the light of those who had come before him and those who still waited in the world he was only beginning to understand. The journey wasn't over, but for now Johnny knew that whatever came next, he was ready. The sea had carried him this far, and it would carry him further still.